This video is sponsored by sellcashier.com. They compare iPhone prices on the internet and give you their instant quote and the most cash for your iPhone. Hey guys, this is Ed with Aquarium. The iPhone XS Max and the iPhone XS are officially on sale, and at the time of this video, both the XS Max and the XS are completely sold out in every Apple store near me. Meaning if you want to buy a new iPhone XS Max or a XS, then you would have to wait a couple of weeks until Apple's supply catches up with demand, or you simply can check with your nearest Apple store after 6 a.m. each day to see if they have your particular model based on your preferred color and storage size. I pre-ordered these two iPhones the very first hour when they were available for pre-ordering. So without further ado, let's get into unboxing of these two creatures and get into performance and battery test part of this video. Alright guys, so this is what you have on your screens right now. Going left to right, this is the iPhone XS Max. This is the 512GB version in gold. And the second phone in the middle is the iPhone XS, also 512GB version, also in gold. And you have a white iPhone X from last year. And this video is really about seeing how Apple has progressed with their developments in the last year. Now, since my previous last year's video, which was a comparison between the 64 versus the 256GB models of iPhone X, some of you have asked to do the same test with the iPhone XS Max against the iPhone XS. So today I will do multiple comparison tests, which will include testing of the battery, the performance, multitasking, and will also run a 3D Mark to test all three of these phones and compare one against the other. And remember guys, all these tests will be done in order to determine if both iPhones perform the same or differently. Based on both of these phone specs, the new ones I mean, Apple tells us that the only difference we should see is in the battery, since the iPhone XS Max has more battery lifetime than the iPhone XS by about 1 hour. So without wasting more time, let's begin our comparison. Alright guys, and so here they are. You have the XS Max, XS, and 10 from 1 year ago, but aren't they all so smooth and perfect and beautiful, how refined they are? And you can't really tell the difference between the 10 from the previous generation, which was last year, and then also the XS that was just released now. And of course you can tell the Max by the size difference, because it is certainly larger, but also if you look at the front of it, they've never made this phone before. Just look at the size of the screen, even though you still have that recess in the center, at the center top actually, it's still a bigger screen and you don't have a button. And if you know me, I don't like the buttons that they used to put on the older iPhones. So the first and foremost, I want to check out how the browsing works on these. I am going to try to do this as simultaneously as I can. We're going to open up weather.com, a very information-rich website with a lot of scripts, and we'll see how all three of these will perform. They are struggling for just a second to open up just because of how the website is set up. I would really tell you that they performed equally well in this test, because the hardware that you have on all three of these phones is more than enough to open any website, even if it's weather.com. So there's no obvious winner. They all work equally well. Alright guys, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to quickly test how these phones open up YouTube videos. Going to use my channel as an example. We'll pick the first video, and any of these phones is going to be great enough for you to browse YouTube and watch videos. So it's really going to be, the result is going to be really contingent upon how simultaneous I will be at tapping the screen on all three of those phones. But what I'll do is I'll tap the first video on each one of these phones, and we're going to see what happens. And it does appear again that a 10 is performing slightly faster. For whatever reason, it opens videos slightly quicker, and then the XS Max comes second and the XS comes the third. I will tell you that the difference is very negligible, but 10 is slightly faster in this little comparison on YouTube. Alright guys, and this is even more simple. This is Angry Birds. Definitely not going to be a difference in any of these, and this is certainly going to differ based on how I do this with the birds. Going to try to do this simultaneously as I can on all three of these. So check it out what happens as the birds collide with anything or they fly past the stuff. There's really no delay with any of that. And this is, you can't expect anything less out of these phones because they have very, very powerful processors. You got the A12 Bionics in the first two phones, which is the recent released 10s Max and the 10s, and you have the A11 Bionic and the iPhone 10 to your right. So these did equally well in this Angry Birds test, and let's move on to the next. Alright, and so the next thing is going to be a little bit more demanding for the processor in terms of the processor load and also the video processor. What we're going to do is we're going to run the 3D Mark on all three of these, and we'll see what score these phones get. And in this objective test, I do expect that the 10s and the 10s Max will score better than the 10 from the previous year. So again, I'm going to try to do this simultaneously so you can see some nicely arranged graphics on your screens. And certainly a 10s Max, when it comes to stuff like this, is a little bit more beneficial just because it has a larger screen. For watching movies, it's actually amazing. If you like watching movies before you go to sleep, this is always great just to have a larger screen, although it may not appear as the diagonal of the screen as much larger. So it looks like no matter what angle you take, and I can't figure out where these are flying from, but it looks like this is upright. This screen is just slightly larger, although when you're holding it very close to your eyes, you will notice that difference. And I will skip the video part and we'll just see the results in a few seconds, but they're all performing very, very smoothly. You can't see any of these phones lagging, and of course at this day and age you wouldn't expect anything less out of these. Alright guys, so here are the results. So we will allow for some variance, which is very, very negligible. So 3,579 is the score, 3,568, and then 2,738 on the iPhone 10. These two are certainly the winners that did equally well, only if you knew what happened in front of the camera just a couple of minutes ago. What you're seeing on the bottom right of your screens right now, this phone, the 10s, the application actually crashed on it when it was getting very close to the end of it. So just something to note. Of course, every program code, allows, there can be an error that can happen, and sometimes applications do crash, but this has never happened to me on a new Apple device that was straight out of the box that I would run a benchmarking app and this would happen. But nevertheless, these two did equally well. This did obviously worse. We don't expect any more out of it just because it's a year-old iPhone and we're comparing it with the ones that were just recently released with the newer generation of the processor. So that's the result from the 3D Mark, and we're going to run benchmarks on Geekbench 4 next. Alright guys, so we're doing two things here with Geekbench 4. What we're going to do is we're going to do the CPU test first, and then we're going to run the battery test first, because Apple did announce the about an hour difference between the two new generation iPhones, between the 10s Max and the 10s. So I just want to see how the batteries compare on these phones and how precise their announcement was by Apple. So without further ado, let's go ahead and run the CPU test. It doesn't really matter if we do this simultaneously, as we will get the results and we can just simply look at them. It'll take about 3 minutes, as you may have seen from one of my other videos. Alright guys, and the results are up. iPhone 10 actually finished with a slight delay, even though they all started almost simultaneously. Again, this is very notable for how they reduce variation between different handsets that come from the same factory. Same generation, same processor, the same A12 Bionic processor will give you an almost identical score between the 10s Max and the 10s, and this is very remarkable. What I won't do is I won't get into the details of what these scores are, and we can briefly look at the single core score, which is what you're seeing right now, and also the multi-core score, but they're roughly the same. And of course, there's a lower end result from the 10 just because it did come out a year ago, and so we do expect about a 600 point difference, slightly over 600. But again, this is the previous generation, and this is the A11 Bionic that doesn't perform as well. So interesting, what we're going to do next is going to be the battery test. Now the battery test is going to run a little bit longer, and I will save you some time, and we'll splice out that part of the video, and we are going to run the battery test and see how they compare. Alright guys, so the last but not the least, and probably one of the most interesting things we can do today with these, is run a battery benchmark through the Geekbench 4. Apple did announce that a battery life on 10s Max is about an hour longer than the one on the 10s. So let's go ahead and run the benchmark and see how these score. Alright guys, so the Geekbench 4 battery test results are up, and as you can see, the 10s Max and the 10s are actually scoring the same results. They're slightly over 3,000 points, which is the battery score on either one of these, and this is a very negligible difference. We're going to ignore this variance, and we're going to assume that even though the battery capacity is different, the larger screen of the 10s Max offsets the battery capacity by so much that it actually equals the results of the battery test on the 10s. Of course, the 10 will have the lower score because it's an older phone. The capacity is a little bit less, and also it's slightly under 3,000. It's not an even result, of course, but we're also assuming that it's also because of how old the phone is. So this is your battery Geekbench 4 result. These are obviously the winners because they actually scored better. They're brand new phones. But like I said, this phone has a larger screen that offsets the battery capacity, so it brings it very close to the battery score on this 10s over here. So this is just about it for the battery test. Alright guys, so what can I tell you about these three beautiful phones? I really think that they're great devices, but there are certain cons to them. Of course, ever since the 10 came out, the screen layout has changed. So, and then now the 10s and then now the 10s Max, they all have a notch screen right at the top. And unfortunately, that's not too pleasant, given that we're in the 21st century and this is the generation of iPhone so many years later than the original one. I do think that there's a chance that Apple may actually know the technology to not have a notch screen, and it's either too expensive or they're really trying to sell everything they can at a time, being to get the money out of their customers. Now, that's only speculation. They're still great phones, and this shouldn't really prevent you from getting one if you already decided. But another problem is the price. The phone is very expensive. Can be as expensive as close to $1,500, which is a lot of money for the phone. And think of it this way, if you're going to get a phone that's as expensive as that, you are going to have to invest into a phone case and a screen protector, because otherwise you're risking breaking it because it's glass all around. So of course, as I mentioned before, the all glass design again means a case and possibly also an insurance, because these are a must for many iPhone buyers of any generation, just because it's really not an investment, but you want to protect your money, but especially for a 10s Max or a 10s, just because of how expensive they are. Of course, there are great things about these phones. A 10s Max is a great blend of handheld comfort. If you like to watch movies before you go to sleep, this is a perfect phone for you, just because of how large the screen is, and also the brightness, and also the resolution, and also the color temperatures. Additionally, the OLED screen is beautiful on all these phones. Again, if you ask me now if I would upgrade from the iPhone 10 to the iPhone 10s Max or a 10s, I probably would not at this point in time, and again, it is mostly based on the iPhone 10s Max and the 10s, very expensive price tag. But this is just me, so please let me know in your comments down below if you would upgrade to an iPhone 10s Max or a 10s, and why. If you like this video, then please hit that like button down below, and I will see you guys in my next aquarium video very soon. I wanted to tell you about sellcashier.com. So you just got your new iPhone. What will you do with your old one? You may be thinking of selling it on eBay, Craigslist, and so on, and it is definitely a hassle. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can sell it through sellcashier.com. They compare the actual prices of iPhones and give you the best price for your iPhone that you are trying to sell. And the good thing is that you are guaranteed the best rate. You also get a free shipping label. Thank you for watching, and please check out sellcashier.com.